Tuesday, July 10, 2018. 12:37 a.m., Shanann posted regarding food allergies. Again at 12:41 a.m., she posted another one. At 1:04 a.m., she posted a picture regarding allergies. A little later at 1:36 a.m., she was still up eating a Probar. I think Shanann was having trouble sleeping, perhaps after the problems between her and Chris's parents the day prior. At 5:59 a.m., Chris left for work. At 6:27 a.m., Chris arrived at the Anadarko office. That afternoon at 4:25 p.m., Shanann posted a couple of videos of the girls at a play center with her parents and the girls with Santa and Olaf.
Yo, Papa. You got it, Papa.
You want a pony? You want a pony too? Like a real pony? Or a toy pony? Uh-oh. A real cat? You want a cat too? So, okay. Well, have you girls been on the good list to get a real pony and a real cat?
Ask her what it is. Want to ask her what it is?
Hi, Olaf.
At 5:22 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held an 8-minute conversation. At 6:24 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "It's already been one crazy busy week already. Stressful yet amazing. Had so much fun with parents and kids today, now they are swimming with Pop Pop. I love having the energy, mood support, patience and just feeling great. Thrive allows me to create so many memories with my kids. As a mom we have to be on our A game, I definitely am these days." At 7:32 p.m., Shanann texted Chris saying, "You okay? It's like you don't want to talk. I kept trying to talk and I had to dig it out of you." Chris replied, "I'm fine, baby. The last few days at work have put a lot of responsibility on me with new people. I didn't mean to seem short, boo. I love you to the moon and back." Shanann said, "I miss you and I feel like you just want to work out and run." Chris replied, "Running helps clear my head, it's a way to free it all." Shanann said, "I wish my husband wanted to talk to me." On this day, Chris and Kessinger had no contact over the phone. I believe Chris and Kessinger are together after work on this day, no calls or texts between them, and it seems he has no time for Shanann and the girls. Wednesday, July 11, 2018. At 5:20 a.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 7-minute conversation. At 5:54 a.m., Chris left for work. At 6:19 a.m., Chris arrives at the Batcave. This is where Anadarko stores tools etc. for work. That morning Shanann posted a couple of Thrive posts. For those that don't know, Thrive is a supplement that is touted to have multiple benefits ranging from weight loss to supporting muscle growth. The capsules are designed to support muscle and joint function, improve digestion, increase cognitive performance, and boost the immune system. After taking the capsules, you are supposed to drink a Thrive shake 20 minutes later, and wear a patch. Shanann is a Thrive promoter. At 2:40 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "First trimester or not, it's hot." A couple of minutes later she said, "Should be worn out from this heat and running around, especially first trimester. Going home to color hair now." At 4:20 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 13-minute conversation. The rest of her evening was posting about Thrive. Thursday, July 12, 2018. At 4:46 a.m., Shanann made 2 unanswered calls to Chris on his work phone. I wonder if he was still with Kessinger at this point or driving back home. Then at 5:16 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held a 10-minute conversation from his work phone. All previous calls have been on his personal phone. I don't know why they are now using his work phone as Chris is still at home at this point. At 5:49 a.m., Chris left for work. He arrives at 6:15 a.m. at the Anadarko office. Shanann spends the morning posting Thrive posts. At 1:41 p.m., she posted a picture saying, "Bella loves some watermelon." Chris arrived home from work at 4:02 p.m. At 7:45 p.m., Shanann posted a picture. Friday, July 13, 2018. At 5:25 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held a 1-minute conversation. He called her again at 5:32 a.m. and held a 4-minute conversation. Both calls back on his personal phone. At 5:46 a.m., Chris leaves for work. He arrives at the Anadarko offices at 6:14 a.m. At 7:17 a.m., Shanann posted regarding allergies, saying, "My heart. Even items we know is safe, we have to read every time in case the manufacturer changed ingredients. It's a challenge at times, but it's my daughter's life and our life." While at work at 7:24 a.m., Chris logged into Facebook. At 4:07 p.m., Chris arrives home from work. At 4:21 p.m., he called Shanann and held an 8-minute conversation. He called her back moments later and held a 12-minute conversation. Brittany Grasmick paid Nicole Kessinger on Venmo for drinks, tent, bed, congrats. I believe this is payment from the birthday getaway trip she took with Kessinger. Saturday, July 14, 2018. Chris's grandmother had her 93rd birthday today. Shanann and the girls went to see her. Sam Paisley, Shanann's friend, said the marriage problems between Chris and Shanann were starting around this time. At 9:58 a.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a nearly 5-minute conversation. At 10:19 a.m., Chris logged into Facebook. At 10:24 a.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 1-minute conversation. She was probably telling him she had arrived to pick him up, to go to the Shelby Mustang Museum in Boulder. They drove in her Toyota 4Runner. They arrived at approximately 11 a.m. Between 10:56 a.m. and 11:38 a.m., Chris took photographs of assorted vehicles at the Shelby American Collection. After going to the museum, Kessinger took Chris back to his home. This time Kessinger says they entered the house through the garage. While at his house, she said she felt uncomfortable, as if she did not belong there. According to Chris, while at the house, Dieter led Kessinger upstairs. She came back down with a frozen look on her face. It's on this visit Kessinger claimed she saw a picture of Shanann and one of the girls. And she apparently talked to Chris about not separating from his wife. Kessinger said, "He had built a beautiful life and it made me think that there was still a chance for him to fix things with his wife. I told him that I did not think it was fair to Shanann. Or to me, that he was trying to live 2 lives, by being in a relationship with both of us at the same time." She said that, "I think he either needed to fix things with her, and let me go, or he needed to move towards trying to finalize his divorce. I told him that I thought his problems with Shanann were fixable, and that he should focus on trying to rekindle the relationship that they had before giving up." Chris said that Shanann was set on separating and that so was he. He said when Shanann wants something, she gets her way. I told him I did not understand why they hadn't completed the divorce after all these months if they were both so adamant about it. If she wanted it as bad as he stated, I did not understand why it seemed stagnant. She asked Chris, "Why are we doing this? Are you willing to give all this up?" At this moment, Kessinger said she realized that he might be lying to her about his separation, so she started quizzing him on things he had told her earlier. She said, "I asked him when was the last time he was intimate with his wife. He told me that day that the last time he and Shanann had sex was in May, but had told me on an earlier date that the two had not been intimate since March or early April. I asked if he used protection when he slept with her, because he stated on an earlier date that he used condoms when they had sex. He told me that he had not used protection. I asked him if he was lying about his separation. He said no. I asked him if he was actively trying to have a child with Shanann since they had unprotected sex. He said no." Kessinger yelled at him and stormed out to her truck, sitting in her truck, texting Chris for 30 minutes. In Chris's letters to Sherilyn Cadle, he said, "July 14th, when we got back from the Shelby Museum, we stopped by my house before we went to get something to eat. While in the house, Kessinger was playing with Dita and he led her upstairs, and she saw a lot of pictures of Bella, Celeste and Shanann. I was downstairs at the time. She came back downstairs with this frozen, dazed, and confused look on her face. Probably now realizing for the first time in her head the family life I lived and the family that would be broken to pieces. We laid on the couch and she said, "You have all this, more than most people, and we are doing this. Why are we doing this? Are you willing to give all this up? Is your relationship that bad?" I said. Shanann and I were drifting apart and that we didn't talk. I'm not sure if I believed that fully, but I can see the differences in our relationship today. I also said, Shanann and I were actively trying to have a baby before we met. Kessinger instantly freaked out about this, because she didn't think the relationship could have been that bad if Shanann and I were trying to conceive. She went out to her truck and sat there for about 30 minutes texting me while I was inside my house. I somehow calmed her down. Kessinger repeatedly reminded me I was the only guy she had ever met that tried to fix problems, smooth out issues and talk about things. Ironically, I never did that with Shanann. Maybe I thought she wouldn't listen. After this, Kessinger still invited me over to her house like nothing had happened and said, "I got mad because I thought I could give you a son, and then when you told me you and your wife were trying, that made me upset." Between 12:46 p.m. and 1:08 p.m., Shanann made 4 unanswered calls to Chris. Was this when Chris was busy trying to calm Kessinger down? At 1:17 p.m., Chris answered Shanann's 5th call and held a minute-and-a-half conversation. Kessinger was either with Chris or sat in her truck outside. At 1:25 p.m., Chris searched the internet for 24 Carat Bistro and the restaurant's menu. It's confirmed this restaurant is located at 578 Briggs Street in Erie. Possibly where Chris and Kessinger went for something to eat. Between 2:36 p.m. and 3:27 p.m., Shanann continued to make unanswered calls to Chris. Possibly Chris is still out eating or traveling with Kessinger. At 3:37 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a nearly 5-minute conversation. Call record shows she was in North Glen at this time. If they traveled in her vehicle like she said they always did, she must have dropped him off and left. Again at 4:02 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 4 to 4 minute conversation. First longest call recorded. Call shows as in Thornton. Between 4:25 p.m. and 5:23 p.m., during that call between Kessinger and Chris, and just afterwards, Shanann made 4 more unanswered calls to Chris. Then at 5:23 p.m., Chris called Shanann and held a 10-minute call. Chris then at 6:14 p.m., spent nearly 2 hours online researching Dave Bunk Minerals, a mineral dealer located in Arvada, and dioptase, a translucent emerald-colored mineral. I wonder if something regarding this was spoken about in the 44-minute call. Later that day Shanann posted that she had bought Baby Watt's first outfit at 6:59 p.m. To me this outfit looks like it's for a baby boy. Sunday, July 15, 2018. Celeste's birthday party. At 7:16 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held an 8-minute conversation. Just after this call at 7:28 a.m., Shanann posted saying, "Alesha, I need this shirt, and one for Celeste. Please don't offer me food without asking my mom first. #food allergy kid." At 8:05 a.m., Shanann posted saying, "allergy awareness, I have been on such high alert this summer since we are traveling. Everything in our home is completely safe for Celeste so I don't worry as much unless we go out to eat, which isn't often anyway. Some understand and some think I'm being paranoid. I have to hear my kid cry after taking a treat out of her hand because someone gave it to her and I can't read the ingredients. She's just turning 3 and don't understand exactly why she can't have what others are having. She is never around people in Colorado that are eating something she can't, so she doesn't feel left out. She thinks she is in trouble when I say no to something she can't have on this trip and I feel terrible for it. I'm so grateful for all our friends, especially in Colorado who consider my daughter's safety when we are around or they come over for playdate. I'm grateful for everyone who thinks and respects my daughter's safety while we visit in North Carolina. Trust me, it's hard enough to have to read and reread everything. At 8:51 a.m., Shanann posted, "We have a girl and boy's name picked out. Now to see what we are having. Find out when I go back to Colorado. Get planning Taylor." Taylor is her friend and she babysits at times for the girls. At 11:37 a.m., Shanann called Chris and held a nearly 5-minute conversation. At 11:42 a.m., Kessinger called her mom and left a voicemail. 10 minutes later at 11:52 a.m., Kessinger's mom called her and held a 75-minute conversation. At 12:36 p.m., Chris called Vivint and held a 20-minute conversation. He entered Vivint into his contacts following the call. While still on the phone to Vivint at 12:50 p.m., Chris took 3 images of his basement from different perspectives to capture the layout. At 4:19 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 6-minute conversation. You can see from the picture Chris is in the basement when Shanann calls him. Shanann is hosting Celeste's birthday party. 10 minutes after talking to Shanann at 4:35 p.m., Chris took 3 more images of his basement from different perspectives. At 6:52 p.m., Shanann posted a video saying, "Such an amazing party for Celeste today with friends and family. #20 kids. Shanann texts Cassie saying, she had got home from Celeste's party and the in-laws were a no-show. She says they are out of her kid's life now and that she wants to block them. Cassie says she would keep them on Facebook, but would not talk to them or make it a point to be around them for anything. Shanann says she does not ever want to see them again. There are no registered calls between Chris and Kessinger on this day. I believe they must be together. I find it very odd that the day prior Chris and Kessinger had their first registered long phone call. Chris was searching for dioptase, today calling Vivint and taking pictures of the basement. Monday, July 16, 2018. From this day on, Chris includes Kessinger in his morning routine calls. At 5:01 a.m., he called Kessinger and held a 3-minute conversation. Then at 5:33 a.m., Shanann called him and held a nearly 5-minute conversation. At 8:35 a.m., Chris took 3 photographs from an Anadarko corporate office in Platteville, one of which was of a sunflower near what appears to be his work truck. Between 12:26 p.m. and 12:28 p.m., Chris resumed his internet search of Dave Bunk Minerals. While he was at work. At 1:01 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "It's bow time. Sorry Chris, baby wanted it." Eating lunch at Bojangles. At 1:01 p.m., Kessinger called Longmorn Toyota and held a 12-minute conversation. Then at 1:21 p.m., Kessinger received an automated reminder of service appointment at Longmorn, Stapp Interstate Toyota. Between 1:29 p.m. and 1:33 p.m., Chris searched Google on topics like touch-up paint bottles Toyota, Toyota dealership Highway 85 and Toyota dealership Brighton. Kessinger owned a Toyota. Seems they are both searching for Toyota dealerships while both being at work and more than likely saw each other while at work. At 3:42 p.m., Chris arrives home from work. Between 3:46 p.m. and 4:24 p.m., Shanann and Chris exchanged several calls, holding nearly 33 minutes in conversations. At 3:46 p.m., Kessinger called James Gutowski, Jim, and held a 19-minute conversation. First call recorded. Approximately the 15th of July 2018 to the 19th of July 2018, in text and person, Kessinger said, "Chris tells me that he still wants a separation, but this time he states it is because he has never met anyone like me. I told him that he better not be doing that for me and that he needs to be leaving his current situation because it is what he and her both felt is the best for their kids and for themselves." Tuesday, July 17, 2018. Chris's Anadarko gift card had a value load of $250 and $50 on this day. At 5:01 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 2-minute conversation. I think Chris lets her know when he is back home after leaving her place. At 5:22 a.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 5.5-minute conversation. At 5:51 a.m., Chris leaves for work. He arrives at the Anadarko office at 6:16 a.m. At 6:20 a.m., Kessinger called James Gutowski, Jim, and held a 6-minute conversation. Between 10:12 a.m. and 11:46 a.m., Chris took around 10 images of trees and grassland flowers in an open prairie just north of Roggen. These pictures were taken at different Survey state sites, the only time he went out there for months prior. He was at Survey 629, Survey 1029, Survey 1129. He also visited Survey 719 after he had taken the pictures at the other Survey sites. Was he searching out places he could dispose of the bodies at? At 12:02 p.m., Kessinger phoned someone who works at Anadarko and held a 4-minute conversation. She was at work at this time also. At 2:20 p.m., Chris texted Kessinger saying, "I hope it's 2:30. You need some rest, boo." A short while later at 3:07 p.m., Kessinger phoned Jim and held a 26-minute conversation. Call registered in Fort Lupton. This call will end at 3:33 p.m. Meanwhile, 3 minutes later at 3:10 p.m., Chris stops at the Safeway parking lot in Fort Lupton for 18 minutes, until 3:28 p.m. He then leaves to drive home. Were Chris and Kessinger here together? I believe so. She was also on the phone to Jim the whole time. Was planning happening? What do you think? There seems to have been a lot happening the past few days. At 3:51 p.m., Chris arrived home. At 4:37 p.m., Chris took a photograph of his new work boots, identical to those found in the Lexus during that search. At 5:01 p.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 2-minute conversation. At 5:31 p.m., Kessinger received a call from someone who works at Tasman Geosciences, Anadarko, and held a 27-minute conversation. Sandra L. Gironda, Shanann's friend, met up with Shanann at 6:30 p.m. at her family's restaurant in Southern Pines. They sat on the patio and had dinner. Shanann's mother watched the girls. At 7:38 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 3-minute conversation. Straight after, Kessinger left a voicemail for her mom. 2 minutes later at 7:42 p.m., Kessinger called her mom again and held an 8-minute conversation. At 11:10 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "Spinach lasagna was amazing. Red and white sauce OMG. Had an awesome time catching up with Sandra and seeing a lot of old friends. Sandra, we must do it again before I leave. Love you, girl. Checked into Vito's Restaurant Pizzeria." Sandra left a comment on this post saying, "Absolutely, I have missed you, our chats and your beautiful self. I had the very best time catching up with you. I am so very proud of you, the lady that you are and your driven spirit. Looking forward to spending more time with you before you head out back to Colorado, love you back." Wednesday, July 18, 2018. At 5:15 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 2-minute conversation. At 5:26 a.m., Shanann called Chris on his work phone and held a 4-minute conversation. Straight after at 5:30 a.m., Chris called Kessinger again and held a 4-minute conversation. Again straight after at 5:34 a.m., Chris called Shanann back on his personal phone and held a nearly 4-minute conversation. Then at 5:50 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 3-minute conversation. At 6 a.m., Chris left for work and arrived at the Anadarko office at 6:25 a.m. At 7:50 a.m., Kessinger received a call from a friend for 1 minute. At 9:45 a.m., for the first time, Chris transferred a lot of assorted images of Kessinger, some semi-nude, into the secret calculator application on his phone. Certain images were taken by Chris, as evidenced by his reflection in a mirror in the background. Shanann spent the morning posting Thrive, and at 10:48 a.m., she posted a picture. Later that day at 3:20 p.m., Chris arrived home but stayed sitting in his truck until 3:58 p.m. He was talking to Kessinger, because he called her at 3:21 p.m., and they held a 24-minute conversation. At 3:24 p.m., Shanann posted saying Bella had said, "Mommy, can I rub my baby?" Then at 3:32 p.m., she posted saying, "If Sandy Onorati does your hair, she now has a booth at Hair Jazz. She's accepting new clients as well. I don't understand why her mother goes by her maiden name." 3:44 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 14-minute conversation. Chris is still sitting in his work truck talking to her. Their last call ended at 3:44 p.m., and she calls him straight back. I wonder if Chris is talking in his truck so Shanann doesn't know from the security cameras that he is actually home yet. Kessinger's call is registered in Longmorn. At 3:58 p.m., Chris leaves his work truck and enters home. At 4:34 p.m., Kessinger left What's a voicemail, the giggle voicemail. Kessinger's call now registers in Frederick.
Hi. It's me. You guys just call me back when you have a chance. Bye.
5 minutes later at 4:40 p.m., Chris called Kessinger back and held an 11-minute conversation. At 4:52 p.m., straight after her call from Chris, Kessinger called Jim and held a 6-minute conversation. At 5:11 p.m., Jim called Kessinger and held a 16-minute conversation. This call will end at 5:27 p.m. At 5:14 p.m., Shanann posted that Bella was robbing her baby. 5:27 p.m., straight after his last call to Kessinger ended, Jim called her straight back and held another 13-minute conversation. At 7:26 p.m., Chris searched Google for Shorehaven, North Myrtle Beach. A search found a long list of companies offering vacation rentals in this area. Shanann and Chris went to North Myrtle Beach for a few days when Chris goes to North Carolina to join them at the end of the month. I wonder if he is looking to book them in here. At 9:04 p.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 2-minute conversation. At 9:10 p.m., Shanann posted a picture. Today is the last time Shanann spoke with Sam Paisley. Prior to this, Sam said they spoke a lot. Thursday, July 19, 2018. At 5:16 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 1-minute conversation. At 5:30 a.m., Chris called Kessinger again and held a 5-minute conversation. Straight after at 5:35 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held a nearly 10-minute conversation. At 6:06 a.m., Chris left for work. At 6:20 a.m., Kessinger called Jim and held a 28-minute conversation. At 6:31 a.m., Chris arrived at the Anadarko office. At 8:17 a.m., Shanann posted saying, "Bella's so allergic to North Carolina, poor kid, even with 2 allergy meds she's still miserable." 8:22 a.m., Facebook comments from Shanann. "The poor kid, keeps rubbing eyes, sneezing, scratching skin and just looks miserable. I just gave her Benadryl. She's on Zyrtec and Flonase. We have her allergy testing when we go back home. I always have Benadryl because of Celeste too. OMG right. And we are getting ready to go into respiratory season. Poor thing. I feel you, that's Celeste, she's on 4 daily meds for preventative." At 10:08 a.m., Shanann posted a picture saying, "Running errands with 2 wild kiddos. #thriving." At 10:41 a.m., Chris called an unidentified contact, no name, no number, and held a 7-minute conversation. At 2:17 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "Who will I see tonight at the Lillero pop-up with Sharon? I'm bringing kiddos, anyone is welcome." Sharon is Christopher Miller's wife. At 3:20 p.m., Kessinger called her dad and held a 1-minute conversation. At 3:48 p.m., Chris arrived home from work. At 5:06 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 39-minute conversation. This call ended at 5:45 p.m. 1 minute after this call ended, Kessinger called Jim at 5:46 p.m. and held a 1-minute conversation. Kessinger calls Chris then Jim quite often. At 8:35 p.m., Chris logged into Facebook. Friday, July 20, 2018. At 1:59 a.m., Chris logged into Snapchat, toyapagroup.picaboo. At 5:15 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 21-minute conversation. At 6:07 a.m., Chris left for work. He arrived at the Bat Cave at 6:33 a.m. At 8:07 a.m., Kessinger received a call from US Hydro and held a 2-minute conversation. At 9:20 a.m., Kessinger received a call from Catherine at Anadarko and held a 5-minute conversation. At 9:25 a.m., Kessinger then called US Hydro back and held a 2-minute conversation. Later this day at 3:09 p.m., Chris arrived at 12172 Race Street, Thornton, which is at Eastlake Park, near Kessinger's apartment. At 3:10 p.m., while Chris is with Kessinger, Shanann posted saying, "Uncle Frankie messing with Celeste." At 3:24 p.m., Kessinger received a call from Kaylee at Tasman Geosciences and held a 3-minute conversation. Again at 3:29 p.m., Kessinger received a call from Kaylee at Tasman Geosciences and held a 6-minute conversation. At 3:51 p.m., Chris left 12172 Race Street, Thornton in his work truck and proceeded to his mailbox. At 4 p.m., Kessinger called Angela, friend, and held a 1-minute conversation. At 4:34 p.m., Chris arrived at his mailbox and proceeded home. He arrived home at 4:37 p.m. A short while later at 5:04 p.m., Chris searched Google for the best beer in Colorado. At 5:09 p.m., Chris texted Christina Meacham, Shanann's friend. He said, "Do you want me to talk solely about the experience with Burn or say I've been on Thrive for over 2 years? Lost 55 pounds and then go into the Burn experience?" Christina replied, "The experience with Burn, the difference it made and what you have felt. Call starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." Between 5:23 p.m. and 7:57 p.m., Chris searched Google for a CVS pharmacy in Westminster, DC Oaks Brewhouse and Eatery, the Bandimere ticket office, for the NHI Nationals, scheduled for July 21, 2018, and 24-hour fitness locations in Westminster and Thornton. At 6:12 p.m., Chris transferred more assorted images of Kessinger, some semi-nude, into his secret calculator application. They included this image. At 6:30 p.m., Chris has a Thrive call with Christina Meacham. Colorado is 2 hours behind Eastern Standard Time. The 20th of July 2018, Nicole Kessinger said, "Chris and I attempted to have sex 4 times that evening and he seems mentally interested, but physically cannot perform. I asked him what the problem was several times and he kept telling me that nothing was wrong. I told him that he was quiet that day and it seemed like he had something on his mind. I asked him if what was bothering him had to do with the conversation that occurred the previous weekend. Chris said yes. Kessinger had told him she had been asked out on dates. Apparently she was supposed to meet someone when she went to the Rockies game prior but was stood up. She said, he told me that initially he was mad that I had been asked out on dates, but then felt that he couldn't be mad because that would make him an hypocrite. Said what was really bothering him was that I kept asking him to try to fix things with Shanann. Chris told me that he would attempt to fix things with her when he was in North Carolina and that he didn't want to talk about it anymore while he was home. The sex from then on for the rest of the relationship was greatly reduced from 3 to 4 daily to 1 or maybe 2 times and was not as intimate when it occurred. Sex no longer happened every day we hung out, but was still very frequent." Looking at both these pictures, Kessinger is wearing the same dress on both. I am assuming both these pics were taken on the same day. Did Chris park near East Lake No. 3 because that's where they went? Is Kessinger leaning over a railing that's on this park? What do you think? Saturday, July 21, 2018. 7:43 a.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 20-minute conversation. 10:34 a.m., Chris transferred more images of Kessinger into his secret calculator application. 10:52 a.m., Shanann posted saying, "Today is going to be so much fun. See everyone at Kickback Jacks at 1 p.m. 11:50 a.m., Kessinger received a call from Lisa, friend I believe, and held a 45-minute conversation. 12:34 p.m., Shanann posted that she was attending the Thrive Experience local at Kickback Jack's Southern Pines. She posted a picture showing her growing tummy. 12:46 p.m., Kessinger called her mom and held a 6-minute conversation. Call registered in Thornton. 1 p.m., the event at Kickback Jack starts. Sandra Gironda also attended the event. 1:05 p.m., Kessinger called Jim and held a 28-minute conversation. Call registered in Thornton. 1:58 p.m., Chris texts Shanann, headed out to the track boo. I will text you when I get there. Chris likely provided a concocted ruse regarding his plans to visit the speedway via an earlier phone call to Shanann. Chris and Kessinger were going to Bandimere Speedway to watch the drag races. Kessinger said they were here till dark. 2:59 p.m., Kessinger called Jim and held a 2-minute conversation. Call registered in Thornton, so not left for trip to Bandimere yet. 3 p.m., end of event at Kickback Jack's. 4:26 p.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 1-minute conversation. Call registered in Morrison, Colorado. They are supposed to be together, so not sure why he called her, maybe lost her for a minute. Also possible they traveled separately. Discovery says they arrived here early afternoon. I would call this late afternoon, not early. Prior to attending the event at Bandimere Speedway, they went to a rooftop bar in Morrison, Colorado where they ate lunch. Kessinger could not recall the name of the bar, but after an open-source search it is likely the location is the Rooftop Tavern at 215 Bear Creek Avenue, Morrison, Colorado. They ate tacos. 4:50 p.m., Kessinger called OLT Orient Mine and held a 3-minute conversation. Call registered in Morrison, Colorado. Proving she is there with Chris. Between 6:18 p.m. and 8:39 p.m., using his phone, Chris filmed assorted clips of dragsters at Bandimere. Throughout this time frame, Chris also searched Google on topics like Top Fuel Dragster Burnout and Top Fuel Dragster Goes Airborne. 11:47 p.m., Shanann posted saying, "So incredibly proud of everyone here. Amazing local today with some powerful testimonies. Not a dry eye in the room. Love you all." Sunday, July 22, 2018. 7:13 a.m., Kessinger called her mom and held a 4-minute conversation. Her call registered in Thornton, her mom's phone registers in Denver. At 7:32 a.m., she called her mom again and held a 5-minute conversation. Her call still registering in Thornton. 7:52 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held a 12-minute conversation. Shanann called him back afterwards and held an additional 14-minute conversation. 8:11 a.m., Kessinger received a call from her mom and held a 1-minute conversation. This time Kessinger's phone registered in Denver. At 8:18 a.m., Kessinger again received a call from her mom and held a 1-minute conversation. Her phone still registering in Denver. Straight after at 8:19 a.m., Kessinger called her mom and held a 2-minute conversation. Her phone still registering in Denver. And again at 8:22 a.m., Kessinger called her mom and held another 2-minute conversation. Both phones registering in Denver. I wonder, did Kessinger go to see her mom? 8:41 a.m., Shanann posted some pictures from the Thrive local yesterday. 9 a.m., Chris searched Google for a Home Depot near me, Broomfield. 11:04 a.m., Kessinger called Lisa, friend I believe, and held a 3-minute conversation. Call registered back in Thornton. 11:12 a.m., Lisa called Kessinger and held a 1-minute conversation. Call still registering in Thornton. 12:27 p.m., Kessinger called Longhorn Steakhouse and held a 1-minute conversation. Call registered in North Glen. Kessinger is most likely at home. 1:48 p.m., Chris searched Google for Spanish dancing near me, red wine made in Argentina, and the Cheesecake Factory. 1:54 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 54-minute conversation. Call registered in Thornton. 3:25 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held an 18-minute conversation. She called back afterwards and held an additional 21-minute conversation. Cassie Rosenberg said she knew Shanann and Chris were having problems around this time. Monday, July 23, 2018. 5:15 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 1-minute conversation. 15 minutes later at 5:30 a.m., Chris called Kessinger again and held a 4-minute conversation. 5:40 a.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 2-minute conversation. 6:22 a.m., Kessinger called Jim and held a 32-minute conversation. Her call registered in North Glen. 7 minutes after the last call ended, Jim called Kessinger back at 7 a.m. and held a further 22-minute conversation. Kessinger's phone registered in Broomfield. 8:25 a.m., Chris transferred an image of Kessinger into his secret calculator application. 3:52 p.m., Kessinger called Great Sand Dunes Oasis and held a 4-minute conversation. Her call registered in Platteville, where she works. 3:56 p.m., Kessinger called Colorado Parks Wildlife and held a 3-minute conversation. Her call registered again in Platteville. 4:56 p.m., Kessinger called her dad and held a 46-minute conversation. Her call registered in Thornton. 5:02 p.m., Chris called Nicole Atkinson briefly. 5:36 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 9-minute conversation. 5:49 p.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 3-minute conversation. 6:02 p.m., Chris searched Google for clean eating restaurants near me and near Erie. He also searched 24 Carat Bistro and Lazy Dog Restaurant. $39.66 posted on Chris's account, spent at the Lazy Dog Erie. 6:05 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 2-minute conversation. Her call registered in Broomfield. 7:27 p.m., Kessinger called Chris again and held a 7-minute conversation. Her call still registered in Broomfield. Tuesday, July 24, 2018. 5:15 a.m., Chris called Kessinger and held a 2-minute conversation. A short while later at 5:29 a.m., Chris called Kessinger again and held a 9-minute conversation. 5:54 a.m., Chris called Shanann and held a 5-minute conversation. He was still talking to Shanann when he left for work at 5:56 a.m. He arrived at the Anadarko office at 6:23 a.m. While still there at 8:12 a.m., Chris transferred a nude image of Kessinger into his secret calculator application. 1:17 p.m., Kessinger searched Google for, "Man I'm having affair with says he will leave his wife." Chris was out in the field working in Fort Lupton at that time. This shows me she definitely knew Chris was a full-on married man and not on the way to separation. 1:58 p.m., Josh Rosenberg texted Chris. He sent an image of the temperature in his car, 120 Fahrenheit, and said, "How you doing?" 2:28 p.m., Chris replied, "Geez, nowhere near that. Only 97 here, but the humidity from the rain yesterday sucks big time." 2:28 p.m., Josh sends another image, temp now 123 Fahrenheit. "This is it now." 2:28 p.m., Chris replied, "No thank you. That sucks." 3:37 p.m., Chris arrived home. 3:49 p.m., Shanann called Watts and held a nearly 10-minute conversation. Between 4:06 p.m. and 4:45 p.m., Sandra Rusek, Shanann's mother, called Chris 12 different times, connecting on occasion, and held roughly 30 minutes of conversations. Why does neither Sandra or Chris tell Shanann about these calls? 5:03 p.m., Kessinger received a call from Taylor, friend I believe, and held a 1-minute conversation. 5:05 p.m., Kessinger called Taylor back and held a 2-minute conversation. 5:28 p.m., Chris searched Google for Victoria's Secret at the Orchard Town Center. $180.28 was spent and posted on Chris's account for Victoria's Secret. 5:30 p.m., Shanann asked Chris if he was alive. He replied, "Tire light came on when I was leaving King Soopers last night. Got the tires aired back up. Spent a lot of time looking for anything in it. Nothing at all. Shanann responded, you could have answered or texted back. Thought something happened. But you don't care about others' feelings. Or think you're with another girl, or worse. No consideration of others. Why had her mom not told her she had spoken with Chris and that he was okay? 6:02 p.m., Shanann told Chris, I realized during this trip what's missing in our relationship. It's only one-way emotions and feelings. I can't come back like this. I need you to meet me halfway. You don't consider others at all, nor think about others' feelings. Chris replied that he was sorry, and he loves her. Shanann responded, I try to give you space, but while you are working and living the bachelor life, I'm carrying our third and fighting with our 2 kids daily and trying to work and make money. It's not hard texting love you and miss you. If you don't mean it then I get it, but we need to talk. I kept looking at my phone all night and no response from you. Like seriously. We didn't just start dating yesterday. We've been together 8 years and have 2.5 kids together. 6:30 p.m., Sandra Gironda and Shanann met up for their second dinner at the family's restaurant in Southern Pines. Shanann told her the Watts parents didn't show for Cece's birthday party. Shanann said she had texted and called them during the party to make sure they knew where to go and remembered the date, but they never responded to her. 7:44 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 1-minute conversation. Her call registered in Denver. 8:10 p.m., Shanann called Chris and held a 17-minute conversation. 8:42 p.m., Kessinger called Taylor, friend, and held a 1-minute conversation. Her call still registered in Denver. 8:43 p.m., Kessinger called Chris and held a 3-minute conversation. 10:04 p.m., Kessinger searched the internet on topics like Chris Watts, Shanann Watts, Ronnie Watts and 2825 Saratoga Trail. 11:11 p.m., Shanann posted saying, visit with old friends again tonight at Vito's. Sal and Larry have known me almost 20 years now. They haven't aged one bit. Part 7, coming soon.